I'm Augusta, 34 years old, and last Tuesday my phone rang with a call I never expected. My mother's voice, dripping with unusual sweetness, invited me to dinner after 3 years of barely speaking. She mentioned celebrating family successes, which seemed strange, since she'd never acknowledged any of mine. Special guests wanted to meet me, she said, her excitement barely contained. Something felt wrong, like walking into a carefully laid trap. Before I continue this story about the most humiliating night that changed everything, let me ask where you're watching from today. Please hit that subscribe button if family drama stories resonate with you, because what happened next taught me the most expensive lesson about respect and showed me that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's letting people destroy themselves with their own cruelty. The invitation came on an ordinary Tuesday evening, while I was reviewing contracts for my digital marketing consultancy. 3 years had passed since I'd had a real conversation with my mother, Patricia, and even longer since I'd felt welcome in the house where I partially grew up. You see, I became the family disappointment the day my parents divorced when I was 12. My father left for another state, sending birthday cards that gradually stopped coming, while my mother quickly remarried Harold, a wealthy real estate developer, who never let me forget I was baggage from her previous life. I was 15 when they married, old enough to understand that Harold's money came with conditions, and one of those conditions was that I would always be less than. When my half-sister Madison was born, I watched my mother transform into someone I didn't recognize. Madison became the golden child before she could even walk. By the time she turned 5, her nursery had designer furniture worth more than my father had ever made in a year. Her private school tuition cost more than most people's mortgages. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-downs from cousins and got lectures about being grateful for having a roof over my head. The contrast became more pronounced as we grew older. Madison went to Yale, all expenses paid without question. Her spring breaks in Cabo, her summer internships in Paris, her designer wardrobe, everything handed to her like breathing. I worked 3 jobs to get through state college, lived on ramen, and hope studied art and business, while my family mocked my unrealistic dreams at every holiday gathering. Madison graduated and walked straight into an investment banking job, helped by Harold's connections. She moved into a luxury apartment that Harold bought as an investment property, though she told everyone she paid for it herself. At 27, she'd just gotten engaged to Trevor, a surgeon from an old money family who treated service workers like furniture. Their engagement party had made the society pages. Their wedding would probably make national magazines. But here's what my family didn't know. 2 years ago, my struggling digital marketing consultancy finally broke through. I landed a contract with a tech startup that exploded into success. Word spread in entrepreneurial circles that I had a gift for authentic brand storytelling. More clients came, then bigger clients, then corporate clients. 6 months ago, I closed a deal with Morrison Corporation worth $450,000 annually. My little business now generated more revenue than Harold's first 5 years in real estate. I kept the success hidden from my family, partly out of habit, mostly to see if they would ever value me without money as a factor. I still drove my old Honda Civic, shopped at thrift stores, lived in a modest apartment on the unfashionable side of town. Not because I had to anymore, but because I wanted to know who really saw me versus who only saw bank accounts. My mother's voice on the phone carried that fake sweetness she reserved for her country club friends. She talked about Madison's engagement party, planning Harold's new development project, how everyone was doing so wonderfully. She never asked about my work, my health, my life. She just assumed I was still struggling, still needing their pity. "Everyone wants to see how you're doing," she said, and I could practically hear the quotation marks around those words. "We're having a little dinner party this Saturday, nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends." I should have said no. Every instinct screamed that this was a setup for something cruel. But curiosity won. I wanted to see what she had planned. I wanted to know just how far my family would go when they thought I had nothing. "I'll be there," I told her, already knowing I would regret it. Saturday arrived gray and humid, matching my mood as I stood before my closet. Part of me wanted to wear the designer dress I'd bought to celebrate the Morrison contract parrot, with the Louboutins I'd treated myself to after my first 6-figure month. Show them all what they'd missed while busy mocking me. But no. I pulled out my usual black dress from Target, the one I'd worn to countless family dinners, where I'd been the punchline to every joke about success. Simple flats, minimal makeup hair, in a basic ponytail. I wanted to see my family's true colors, without money's distorting filter. The 40-minute drive to my mother's neighborhood gave me too much time to think. I passed through my old middle-class neighborhood where we'd lived before the divorce, those small houses with chain-link fences and above-ground pools. Then gradually into Harold's world of gated communities, perfect lawns, and houses that looked like they'd been copied from the same three blueprints, but with different colored shutters. 3 years ago, during my last visit, my mother had suggested I consider marrying for security since my career wasn't working out. She'd said it kindly, the way you'd suggest someone with no rhythm should maybe sit out the dance. Harold had offered to get me a receptionist position at his company minimum wage, but with health insurance, as if this was the greatest gift he could give someone like me. Madison had laughed about my business cards reading Augusta Digital Solutions out loud in a mocking voice, before asking if I'd made them at home on my printer. The security gate still had the same code my mother's birthday, because she never thought anyone would want to break into their perfect world badly enough to figure that out. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, every hedge trimmed to regulation height, every driveway power washed to the same shade of gray. But when I turned onto their street, my stomach dropped. The driveway wasn't just full, it was overflowing. Madison's white Tesla, with its vanity plate reading Mad Success, sat next to Harold's new Bentley, a black Mercedes I recognized as belonging to Harold's business partner, William. A red BMW that had to be Madison's best friend Jennifer's, two more luxury SUVs I didn't recognize, a Porsche with dealer plates. This wasn't a family dinner. This was an ambush with an audience. I parked my Honda on the street, suddenly aware of how it looked with its slightly faded paint and mismatched hubcap from when someone had stolen the original. For a moment, I considered leaving, but that would give them a story about how I couldn't even show up for dinner. No, I would walk into whatever trap they'd set with my eyes open. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Harold stood there in his weekend casual wear that probably cost more than most people's formal suits, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Augusta, you finally found the place," he said loud enough for people inside to hear. "I was worried you'd gotten lost. I know you don't come to this neighborhood often." I'd grown up in this house for 3 years. I knew every crack in the sidewalk, every tree in the yard. But I smiled and said nothing. Madison appeared behind him, her ring finger strategically positioned to catch the light. She air-kissed me, the kind where you don't actually touch because that might transfer poor people germs or something. "Augusta, oh my God, you look exactly the same." She managed to make it sound like an insult. "Everyone's dying to meet you. Mom's told them so much about you." I could only imagine what version of me my mother had presented. The struggling artist, the family charity case, the cautionary tale about what happens when you don't marry well or choose a practical career. The living room was full of people I half recognized. Harold's business partners, William and James, with their wives. Madison's future in-laws, the Weatherbys, sitting on the couch like they were posing for a portrait. My mother's country club friends, including Margaret Phillips, whose husband owned half the commercial real estate in the city. Jennifer and two other girls from Madison's sorority, all looking at me like I was an exotic animal at the zoo. My mother emerged from the kitchen in a dress that cost more than my old monthly rent, her smile bright and false as costume jewelry. "Augusta, everyone, this is my oldest daughter, Augusta. She's our little artist." The way she said artist made it sound like a communicable disease. The dining room table had been extended to its full-length set with the china my mother had inherited from her mother, but never used when it was just family. Place cards written in Madison's perfect calligraphy told everyone where to sit. Mine was at the far end between Margaret Phillips and an empty chair as far from the main conversation as geometrically possible. As everyone settled into their seats, my mother remained standing wineglass in hand, ready to perform her role as perfect hostess. "I'm so glad everyone could join us tonight," she began, her voice carrying that special tone she used when she wanted to appear gracious. "Family is everything, and we're so blessed to have success to celebrate." She went around the table highlighting everyone's achievements, like she was reading a LinkedIn profile out loud. William's new commercial development that would transform the waterfront, James's son getting into Harvard Medical School, the Weatherby's charitable foundation reaching $1 million in donations, Jennifer's promotion to senior analyst at her firm. And of course, she continued, her smile growing wider, Madison's engagement to Trevor. We couldn't be more thrilled to welcome the Weatherbys to our family. Everyone raised their glasses. I noticed mine had water while everyone else had wine, a small detail but intentional. And Augusta, my mother said, turning to me with that pitying look she'd perfected over the years. Our Augusta is here too, still working on her little computer business. She designs websites for small businesses. Isn't that nice? The way she said nice made it clear she meant sad. Harold jumped in, apparently deciding it was his turn to twist the knife. Augusta's always been our creative one, still trying to make it in the digital world. I keep telling her there's no shame in taking a regular job with benefits, but she's persistent. You have to admire that kind of optimism. Oh, I think it's wonderful, Margaret Phillips said, patting my hand like I was a child who'd just shown her a finger painting. Everyone needs a hobby, and with technology these days, anyone can make a website. My grandson made one for his lemonade stand. Madison laughed, that tinkling fake sound she'd learned at private school. Augusta's been doing this for 5 years now? 6, I can never keep track. 7, I said quietly. 7 years, Mrs. Weatherby exclaimed. My goodness, that's dedication. Though I suppose when you don't have a family of your own to focus on, you can afford to chase dreams a bit longer. Trevor, who hadn't spoken to me once, finally looked in my direction. What exactly do you do, like social media posts and things? Before I could answer, my mother cut in. Oh, Augusta does a little of everything. She's very versatile. Has to be in that gig economy, right? 1 month you're designing websites, the next, you're probably driving for Uber. Everyone laughed politely. I hadn't driven for Uber in 3 years, not since landing my first major client, but my mother was still telling that story. The conversation moved on to Madison's wedding plans, while the salad course was served. I noticed my plate had less on it than everyone else's. Another small detail that spoke volumes. Madison pulled out her phone to show everyone inspiration photos, standing up to walk around the table so everyone could see, except she somehow never made it to my end. The venue alone is $20,000 just to book, Mrs. Weatherby was saying. But you can't put a price on perfection. Augusta probably thinks that's crazy, Madison said with a laugh. She told me once she'd get married at City Hall if she ever found someone. I had said that years ago, when I thought marriage was about love rather than mergers and acquisitions. Speaking of relationships, Jennifer said, looking at me with false concern. Are you seeing anyone, Augusta? My mom knows a nice man who's recently divorced. He's a janitor at her office building, but he's very stable. The table went quiet for a moment, everyone pretending they weren't enjoying this. I'm focused on my work right now, I said. Of course you are, my mother said. Augusta's very independent, always has been. Even as a child, she insisted on doing everything herself. Wouldn't accept help even when she clearly needed it. The main course arrived, some elaborate fish dish that Harold made sure to mention cost $40 per pound. He launched into a story about his new development project, how he was about to close the biggest deal of his career, how the Morrison Corporation was practically begging to partner with him. I almost choked on my water. Catherine Morrison begging to work with Harold. Catherine Morrison, who once told me she wouldn't trust Harold to develop a sandbox. But I kept my face neutral, letting him spin his fantasy. You know Augusta, William said, apparently deciding it was his turn to condescend to me. My nephew is looking for someone to help with basic computer stuff at his company. Data entry filing, that sort of thing. It's entry level, but it's a foot in the door. I could put in a word. That's so generous, my mother gushed before I could respond. Augusta, you should really consider it. Sometimes we have to set aside pride and be practical. Margaret's husband, who'd been quiet until now, looked at me with what he probably thought was kindness. There's no shame in admitting when something isn't working out. I failed at 3 businesses before I found success. Of course, I knew when to quit and get a real job in between. The difference, Harold said, swirling his wine, is that some people have what it takes and some don't. It's genetic, really. Either you have that success gene or you don't. Harold, my mother said in fake protest, Augusta tries very hard. I'm not saying she doesn't, Harold replied. I'm just saying effort without talent is just effort. Madison was showing Trevor's mother something on her phone, both of them giggling. She turned the screen toward the table, and I caught a glimpse of my own Instagram page. Augusta posted last week about landing a new client, Madison said in a voice dripping with condescension. A yoga studio in the strip mall by the highway. She was so excited about it. It's sweet, really. That yoga studio was a side project I'd taken on as a favor to a friend. The post she was mocking was about community and supporting local businesses, but context didn't matter when the goal was humiliation. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room for coffee and dessert. I tried to find a corner to disappear into, but the house seemed designed to prevent escape. Every seat faced the center. Every corner had someone already occupying it. I ended up by the fireplace, pretending to look at the family photos my mother had carefully curated. There was Madison at every age, always smiling, always perfect. Harold and my mother at various charity events and vacations. A few photos from before the divorce had survived, but I'd been carefully cropped out of most of them. In one, you could still see my hand on what had been my father's shoulder. The conversations around me were meant to be overheard. My mother was telling Margaret about how she worried about me constantly, how she wished I would just accept reality and find a nice stable job, maybe meet someone with good benefits who could take care of me. She used the phrase "take care of me" 3 times, like I was an invalid or a child. Harold was holding court with his business partners, but his voice carried deliberately in my direction. The thing about success, he was saying, is that it requires a certain mindset. You can't teach it. Augusta, for example, she works hard, I'll give her that. But working hard at the wrong things is just wasting energy. Some people are meant to be worker bees, William agreed. Nothing wrong with that. Society needs all types. Madison and her friends had formed their own circle. Their voices pitched just loud enough for me to hear every word. I feel bad for her sometimes, Madison was saying. Like she posts these motivational quotes about success and grinding, but she's 34 and still struggling. At some point, you have to face reality. It's kind of sad, Jennifer agreed. My mom says she sees Augusta at the grocery store sometimes, always buying the generic brands, counting coupons. Can you imagine? I offered to help her with her wardrobe once. Madison continued. I have so many things I don't wear anymore. But she's so proud. She'd rather shop at Target than accept help from family. Trevor's mother had cornered me by the bookshelf, her smile sharp as a blade. Madison tells us you're not married, she said, making it sound like a character flaw. That must be difficult at your age. Most of your friends are probably settled down with children by now. I'm focused on my career. I said the same response I'd given 100 times. Career? She repeated the word sour in her mouth. Yes, Madison mentioned your little website business. How brave of you to keep trying. Though I suppose when you don't have other options, persistence is all you have. Margaret Phillips appeared beside us, wineglass in hand, face flushed with alcohol and false sympathy. Augusta, dear, I wanted to ask you something. Are you familiar with government assistance programs? My charity work involves helping people in your situation, and there's no shame in accepting help when you need it. My situation? I asked, keeping my voice level. Well, she waved her hand vaguely. Underemployed single approaching middle age without savings or stability. We have programs that can help with food utilities, even job training for more practical careers. Before I could respond, my mother appeared with an envelope in her hand. The entire room seemed to shift its attention to us, everyone pretending not to watch while obviously watching. Augusta, honey, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. I wanted to give you this before you left. Just a little something to help with gas and groceries this month. She pressed the envelope into my hand, making sure everyone could see the gesture. Inside, I could feel the bills, knowing without looking it would be something insulting like $200 in 20s, enough to look generous to her friends, but small enough to emphasize my supposed poverty. Madison had her phone out, and I realized with horror she was recording this. This is so sweet, she narrated for her future Instagram story. Family supporting family. My mom is literally the most generous person ever. It's nothing, my mother said, but her voice carried to every corner of the room. Family helps family. I know things have been tight for you, Augusta. This should help a little. We've tried to help her so many times, Harold added, addressing the room more than me. offered her job's connections advice, but Augusta prefers to do things her own way. "There's nothing wrong with that," Mrs. Weatherby said in a tone that suggested there was everything wrong with that, though at a certain point, pride becomes stupidity. "I think it's admirable," Trevor said, and for a moment I thought someone was finally defending me. Not everyone can accept their limitations gracefully. It takes a special kind of delusion to keep failing and calling it persistence. Everyone laughed. Actually laughed like he'd said something clever instead of cruel. I stood there, envelope in hand, surrounded by people who thought they were so far above me they could treat me like entertainment. My mother was beaming so proud of her public display of charity. Madison was already uploading her video with hashtags about family and gratitude. Harold was calculating how this made him look to his business partners, the successful man generous enough to support his wife's failed daughter. "I should go," I said quietly. "Oh, don't leave yet," my mother protested, but her tone said, "Please leave so we can discuss you properly. We haven't even had dessert." "I have an early morning," I lied. "On Sunday." Madison laughed. "What is Target having a sale?" Another round of laughter. I walked toward the door, hearing the whispers start before I'd even left the room. Harold's voice carried the clearest. "At least we have Madison. Can you imagine if Augusta was our only child?" "Such a shame," someone responded. "But every family has one, don't they? The one who just never quite makes it." I grabbed my jacket from the closet, my hands shaking with rage more than hurt. As I opened the front door, my mother called out one more time, her voice syrupy sweet for her audience. "Augusta, remember we're always here if you need us. Don't be too proud to ask for help when you finally realize you need it." I turned back to look at her. At all of them, these people who thought cruelty was entertainment and success was character. They had no idea what was coming. "Thank you for dinner," I said simply, then walked out into the night. Behind me, I heard Trevor's mother say, "Well, that was uncomfortable. Does she always leave so abruptly?" "Always." My mother sighed dramatically. "We try so hard with her, but some people just can't be helped." The drive home was a blur of fury and determination. I pulled over twice just to scream in my car, letting out 7 years of accumulated rage and primal shouts that left my throat raw. By the time I reached my apartment, my entire body was shaking, but not with hurt, with resolve. They wanted to humiliate me in front of their wealthy friends. They wanted to make me into a cautionary tale, a failure to point at and pity. They'd choreographed that entire evening to destroy what little dignity they thought I had left. But they'd made one critical mistake. They assumed I was powerless. I sat at my computer and began my research. Harold's new development project was public record. His financing applications, his investor presentations, his projected returns, all available if you knew where to look. And I knew where to look. His main project, Riverside Luxury Towers, needed $60 million in funding. He had $10 million of his own money tied up in it. The rest was supposed to come from 3 sources: Morrison Corporation's investment arm, for $50 million Williams's investment group, for another $5 million, and a construction loan from First National for $5 million. Morrison Corporation. I almost laughed. Catherine Morrison wasn't just my client. She'd become something of a mentor. We had lunch twice a month to discuss strategy for her company's digital presence. She told me stories about Harold, how he'd tried to undercut her on a deal 5 years ago, how he'd spread rumors about her company's stability to steal a project. But that wasn't what would destroy him. What would destroy him was that his application to Morrison Corp contained several creative interpretations of his assets. He'd listed properties at values 30% above market. He'd counted signed letters of intent as confirmed buyers. He'd even claimed Madison's investment banking connections as potential buyers, not mentioning she was his daughter. Madison herself was easier to investigate. Her Instagram life was pure fiction. I used my digital tools to trace her photos. The designer bag she flaunted rental service called Luxury for Less. The apartment she claimed to own Harold's name on the deed listed as an investment property. The car leased under Harold's company. Her job real, but her salary was half what she claimed, and most of her deals came from Harold's connections. Her engagement ring, the one she couldn't stop flashing. I found the exact model on Trevor's credit card statement, which he'd foolishly linked to a rewards program that had been hacked months ago. 4 carats of moissanite, not diamond. Nothing wrong with moissanite, but she'd been telling everyone it was a rare blue diamond from Tiffany's. Trevor himself had secrets. His medical practice was bleeding money, 3 malpractice settlements in 2 years. His parents didn't know about his gambling debts, almost $300,000 to a casino in Atlantic City. He was marrying Madison for her supposed trust fund, the one Harold had been promising, but hadn't actually set up. My mother's country club had strict morality clauses. Conduct unbecoming of a member could result in suspension or expulsion. The recording on my phone of her calling me a charity case of her orchestrating my humiliation for entertainment would be considered exactly that kind of conduct. But I wasn't going to release everything at once. That would be too obvious, too traceable to me. No, this needed to look like the natural consequence of their own arrogance. I started with Catherine Morrison. Our Monday meeting was supposed to be about their Q3 digital campaign, but I knew she'd ask about my weekend. Catherine always asked, genuinely interested in my life outside work. Family dinner, I told her, keeping my voice neutral. My mother invited me over. Harold was there, actually. Your name came up. Her expression shifted immediately. Oh, what was Harold saying about me? Just that you were eager to invest in his new project. Begging, I think, was the word he used. Catherine's laugh was sharp as winter. Begging, I haven't even returned his calls. His proposal is sitting in my reject pile. The numbers don't add up, and I wouldn't trust Harold to develop a vegetable garden, let alone luxury towers. He seemed very confident, I said carefully. He was telling his business partners the deal was essentially done. Was he now? Catherine leaned back in her chair. You know what? I think it's time people knew exactly where Morrison Corp stands on Harold's project. And maybe it's time we looked closer at those numbers he submitted. Something always felt off about them. The second domino was Madison's firm. They had a strict social media policy and an even stricter ethics code about misrepresenting credentials. The anonymous tip I sent from a coffee shop Wi-Fi included screenshots of Madison's LinkedIn claiming degrees she didn't have, deals she didn't close, and positions she'd never held. I also included her Instagram posts about the company's confidential deals, complete with client names she wasn't supposed to share publicly. Trevor's parents received an anonymous package on Wednesday. Screenshots of his gambling debts, his hidden loans, his maxed-out credit cards. The malpractice settlements he'd hidden from them. The real cost and composition of Madison's engagement ring. All public information, if you knew where to look, compiled into a neat folder that told a story of deception. The country club received my mother's greatest hits compilation on Thursday. Audio of her mocking me, video of her using charity as performance art, screenshots of her messages in the members' WhatsApp group, where she'd called other members' children failures and disappointments. All submitted by a concerned member who wished to remain anonymous but felt the club's standards were being compromised. By Friday, Harold's carefully constructed world was crumbling. Monday morning, Catherine Morrison personally called Harold to inform him that Morrison Corporation would not only be rejecting his proposal, but would be investigating the fraudulent information he'd submitted. She mentioned potential legal action for misrepresentation. Tuesday, Harold's 2 other investors pulled out. William called to say he'd heard concerning information about the project's viability. James simply texted that he was no longer interested. The construction loan from First National was put under review, effectively freezing it. Wednesday, Madison was called into HR. Someone had reported discrepancies in her credentials and violations of company policy. Her social media presence was under investigation. Her deals were being reviewed to determine if they were legitimately hers or obtained through improper family connections. She was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Thursday, Trevor's parents confronted him about his debts. The wedding planning came to a screeching halt. Mrs. Weatherby was overheard at the club, saying she needed to reconsider if Madison was the right fit for their family. Trevor himself received notice that his medical practice was under review by the state board, triggered by an anonymous tip about unreported malpractice settlements. Friday, my mother was summoned to a country club board meeting. Her membership was under review for conduct unbecoming. Several members had complained about her behavior at recent events, and there was recorded evidence of her violating the club's values of respect and dignity. Saturday, Harold discovered his liquid assets were trapped. With the project failing, he needed to liquidate his stock portfolio to cover the $10 million he'd already invested. The market was down 12% that week, meaning he'd take a massive loss. His personal guarantee on the construction loan meant his house was now collateral for a loan that might be called due. Sunday morning, I made my move. I posted on my business social media accounts about an exciting announcement. Augusta Digital Solutions had just signed 3 new major clients, Morrison Corporation's subsidiary companies worth a combined $2.8 million annually. Catherine Morrison herself commented, "Thrilled to be working with such a brilliant strategic mind. Augusta's vision for authentic brand storytelling is exactly what our companies need." Forbes had just released their 30 under 35 list for digital marketers to watch. My name was number 12, complete with a feature article about building a multi-million-dollar consultancy from nothing. The article mentioned my innovative approaches, my client retention rate of 98%, and my recent expansion into corporate consulting. Within hours, my phone was exploding. People from Saturday's dinner were Googling me, finding article after article about my success. My client list included names that Harold would kill for. My annual revenue was more than Madison would make in 5 years. My apartment, which my mother had never seen, was featured in a design blog about successful entrepreneurs' homes, showing a space that was understated but clearly expensive. My mother called 15 times before I answered. "What did you do?" she screamed without preamble. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said calmly. "Harold's lost everything. The Morrison deal, the investors' millions of dollars Madison suspended from her job. The club is threatening to revoke our membership." "That sounds stressful," I said. "Maybe you should have been nicer to people when you thought you were untouchable." "You vindictive little witch, how dare you?" "I didn't do anything but stop hiding my success from people who matter." Catherine Morrison asked about my weekend, and I mentioned Harold's name. She made her own decisions about his fraudulent application. Madison's company discovered her lies on their own. Trevor's parents deserve to know who their son really was. And the country club has standards that you violated. None of that is my fault. You recorded me. You set us up. You invited me to dinner specifically to humiliate me in front of your friends. You made me into entertainment for wealthy people who think cruelty is a sport. You handed me $200 in cash in front of everyone like I was a beggar. Madison filmed it for social media. You all laughed at my pain. So yes, I recorded it. But you chose to say those words. You chose to be cruel. I just made sure the right people knew who you really were. She was sobbing now, ugly, gasping sobs that might have moved me once upon a time. "The house," she gasped. "Harold put the house up as collateral. We could lose everything." "You should have thought of that before you decided to destroy someone you thought was powerless. You taught me that money is power, Mother. Thank you for the lesson." I hung up. Madison showed up at my apartment an hour later. When I opened the door, she actually gasped. The view alone from my living room was worth more than her fake designer bags. "Please," she started, and I'd never heard that word from her before. "I need your help. My job, my reputation, everything's falling apart." "I know," I said simply. "You can fix this. You know digital marketing. You can repair my image, make this go away." I agreed. "My reputation management package starts at $50,000. Her face went white. "I don't have that kind of money." "I know. Your salary is $48,000 a year, not the 90 you've been claiming. Your apartment belongs to Harold. Your car is leased under his company. Your designer goods are rented. You have about $3,000 in savings and $15,000 in credit card debt." "How do you—" "It's all public information if you know where to look. You should have been more careful about what you posted online." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for Saturday, for all of it." "No, you're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. You're not sorry for the 7 years of mockery, the constant humiliation, the way you treated me like I was less than human because you thought I was poor." "Please, Augusta, we're sisters. We share DNA, that's all. Sisters don't do what you did to me." She left, but came back 3 days later with a cashier's check for $50,000 borrowed from various sources. I took her money and rebuilt her reputation because I'm a professional, But she had to list me as her consultant on LinkedIn, letting everyone know she needed her failure sister to save her career. Harold tried to approach me next, showing up at my office building looking haggard and desperate. "I need your services," he said without preamble. "I'm not taking new clients," I told him. "I'll pay whatever you charge." "You can't afford me. Besides, I have a conflict of interest. Morrison Corporation is my client. I can't work for someone they're considering legal action against." "You did this," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You destroyed everything I built." "You destroyed everything you built," I corrected. "You submitted fraudulent documents. You lied to investors. You created a house of cards and then invited the wind inside." "I just opened a window." "I tried to help you," he said desperately. "I offered you jobs connections." "You offered me crumbs while telling everyone I wasn't worth more. You said success was genetic and I didn't have the right DNA. You were wrong. I have something better than genetics. I have resilience. I built my success without help, without connections, without family money. Can you say the same?" He couldn't, and we both knew it. 3 months later, I stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, delivering the keynote speech at the Digital Marketing Innovation Summit. 500 of the industry's most successful professionals had paid $3,000 each to attend. As I adjusted the microphone, I spotted them at a back table. Harold and Patricia, my mother, sitting with the few business associates who still acknowledged them. They'd paid full price to attend, hoping to network their way back into relevance. Harold's company had downsized to a single small office. My mother's country club membership had been revoked. They lived in a rental, now the house lost to foreclosure. Success, I began my speech, isn't inherited. It isn't married into. It isn't granted by association or proximity to power. Real success is built through resilience, authenticity, and the courage to keep going when everyone around you is betting on your failure. I saw my mother flinch. Many of us have been told we don't have what it takes. We've been mocked for our dreams, dismissed for our ambitions turned into cautionary tales by people who confused privilege with accomplishment. But here's what those people never understand. When you build success from nothing, when you earn every victory through your own effort, you develop something they'll never have. You develop unshakable strength. The audience was nodding, connecting with the message. These were people who'd built their own success, who understood the difference between earned and given. I spent years hiding my success from people who I thought mattered, waiting for them to value me without knowing about my achievements. What I learned was that some people only understand the language of power and money. They respect bank accounts, not character. They value connections, not competence. I looked directly at Harold and Patricia for the first time. 6 months ago, I was invited to a dinner where I was meant to be the entertainment. My struggles were the appetizer, my failures, the main course, my humiliation, the dessert. The people at that dinner thought they were so far above me that I wasn't even human to them, just a prop in their performance of superiority. The room was silent now, everyone absorbed in the story. What they didn't know was that the person they were mocking had already built something they could never achieve success without shortcuts, wealth without handouts, respect without inheritance. They thought they were punching down. They were actually punching up, they just didn't know it yet. A ripple of laughter went through the audience. The lesson here isn't about revenge or karma, though those things have their place. The lesson is that authentic success, the kind you build yourself, can't be taken away by someone else's opinion. It can't be diminished by mockery or destroyed by disrespect. When you've climbed the mountain yourself, no one can convince you that you don't deserve the view. The applause was thunderous. I waited for it to die down before delivering my final words. To those of you who've been underestimated, mocked, dismissed, your success is coming. And when it arrives, you'll know it's truly yours because you earned every bit of it. To those who've done the mocking, be careful who you underestimate. The person you're laughing at today might be the one you're begging for help tomorrow. As I left the stage, I had to pass their table. Harold looked away. My mother reached out as if to grab my arm, but thought better of it. "Augusta," she whispered. I stopped, but didn't look at her. "That $200, she said quietly. "I meant it to help." "No," I said, finally meeting her eyes. "You meant it to humiliate. But you're right about one thing. It did help. It helped me realize that some investments pay dividends you never expect. Your $200 reminded me that cruelty has a price, and eventually everyone pays it. I walked away, leaving them sitting at their back table, two people who'd lost everything, because they couldn't see value in anything but bank accounts and social status. Later that evening, as I looked out from my apartment at the city lights below, I thought about the journey from that humiliating dinner to this moment. The money wasn't really the victory. The victory was that I'd built something they could never take away: self-respect, genuine success, and the knowledge that I'd risen not despite their cruelty, but because of my own strength. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Morrison. Brilliant speech. Dinner Thursday to discuss the expansion into European markets. I smiled and typed back, absolutely. Success, I'd learned, wasn't just the best revenge. It was the only revenge worth having. And unlike inherited wealth or borrowed status, it was something no one could ever take away. The $200 my mother gave me that night still sits in my desk drawer untouched. I keep it as a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures of cruelty can spark the biggest transformations. She thought she was giving me charity. She was actually giving me the last push I needed to stop hiding and start living as the success I'd already become. Some people say family is everything. They're right, but not in the way they think. Family teaches you who you are by showing you who you refuse to become. My family taught me that wealth without kindness is poverty, that success without integrity is failure, and that the only approval that matters is the one you give yourself. To everyone watching who's ever been made to feel small by people who confuse cruelty with cleverness, remember this: your day is coming. Keep building, keep growing, keep believing in yourself when no one else does. Because when success finally arrives, and it will arrive, you'll know it's yours and yours alone. No one can claim they gave it to you. No one can take credit for your achievements, and no one can ever make you feel less than again. What's your own story of overcoming those who underestimated you? Share in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if this story resonated with you. Give this video a like if you believe in the power of proving doubters wrong, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their success is coming. Thank you for watching. And remember, the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living authentically as exactly who you are meant to be.